Oh, I have two guests in the studio, or one will be joining me very soon. But the one in the studio is Edward Bauer. He's a member of parliament for Bongo. Thanks for joining me, Edward.
Thanks for having me.
And today is World Water Day.
Yes.
I don't know for your constituency, but we know that the focus on today's World Water Day by the UN and WHO is why waste water. And we know that we have various water bodies that we're wasting currently, either because of illegal mining or sometimes just not conserving the water bodies excessively as we should. What would you say about the theme in the first place?
Yeah, thank you very much, and then good morning to your viewers. For a long time, I have not been here. You know,
yes, you have not.
Yes.
You've not been here in that capacity.
Capacity as an MP, yes. Anytime I came here, it was on energy issues.
Yes,
yes.
Communication consultant
yes,
on energy.
Yes. Basically, this year's theme suggests something. Indeed, if you look at the literature available, it suggests that most of the water that we use, particularly if you even use Ghana, only about 7% of it, that's untreated water, only 7% of it is treated, and the rest go to waste. That is the statistic that we have. Indeed, the World Health Organization that you had indicated suggests that about 80% of the water that people drink polluted with feces, which can cause cholera, polio, and what have you. And that about 842,000 deaths per year are associated with contaminated water. So clearly, the theme itself suggests that it is something that we need to deal with. If we were to look at my constituency has a different form of contamination. My constituency has a contamination in terms of high fluoride concentrations. Indeed, the World Health Organization says that...
As in the fluoride that we have in toothpaste?
Yes, very high levels of it. The World Health Organization indicates that the maximum content that you should have in water should not exceed 1.5 milligrams per liter.
Otherwise?
Anything beyond that, you expose particularly kids to what they call dental fluorosis, skeletal fluorosis, or even non-skeletal fluorosis. Now, this is mostly just some pitting that you have on your teeth that makes it brownish. So you see that there are people, it's not because they don't keep hygiene, it's just the fact that it is because of the fluoride content.
I see.
If you look at Bongo's case, for example, the content we have as high as 3.37 milligrams per liter, which is more than 100% of the required maximum limit. And so Bongo in particular has that problem. That's one aspect. The other aspect that Bongo has is that, as we speak to you now, in terms of water deficit, we have about, it's about 70,000 cubic meters per day. So that gives you an equivalent of roughly around 230 boreholes. If you were to look at a borehole producing about 200 cubic meters of water per day, it gives you that, each, it gives you that. That is the deficit that we have. And Roland, the interesting part of this thing, in the Bongo's case, is the fact that the whole of the regional capital and its environs gets its water from Bongo district, because the dam that gets the water for the treatment is located in Bongo district. The plant that treats the water is located in Bongo district, but the Bongo district does not get the water. That is the irony of the situation. That is the point. So over the years, you have a situation where the authorities have appealed to Ghana Water that, look, in the name of fairness, it is only good that if the dam is in our district, if the treatment plant is in our district, at least let's also enjoy the water. Even towns that are close to that do not even have it. The thing is treated and taken to the regional capital. So that is also yet another challenge. And I think that as an MP, I would want to advocate that, and given the opportunity, today I have asked Mr. Speaker to give me the opportunity to make a case on the floor of the House.
So you want to make a statement?
I want to make a statement today.
In particular, we'll be focusing on your constituency.
My constituency, using today's celebration as a yardstick, because today is the day that everybody will focus on water. So it is important that you highlight some of these issues that confront us. Yeah.
But if you look at some of the inefficiencies in water generation in itself, whether it's rural water generation, which is handled by the Community Water and Sanitation Agency, or even by Ghana Water for urban or peri-urban areas, you get to find that the way we use water or treat water is a huge problem that also requires some level of attitudinal change, won't you say?
I agree with you. And I say it's just because over a period of time we have treated water as if it's an infinite resource, which is not true. The truth of the matter is that if we are not very careful, and today it seems I was listening to one of the officers from Ghana Water Company who indicated that if you look at the level to which we pollute water, particularly with the era of this galamsey and what have you, and the cost of treating even the water, because the more you have pollutants in the water, the more you need resources to be able to purify it, that very soon we may be heading towards a situation where we'll have to import fresh water into the country. So yes, attitude is one thing, enforcement of laws is another. Indeed, you go to homes and now there's technology that gives you that look. All water that you use in your home, you don't necessarily have to let it run off. That it could be retreated, and part of it, even for your gardening, you go to homes and it's fresh water, treated water that is used in washing cars, fresh water that is used in watering gardens, when you could have even used the water that is in your house, reach it and recycle it and use it for those things. So it is about the fact that we are refusing to embrace technology. It's about the fact that we think that the resource is infinite. It is about the fact that we think that, after all, today it's not going to affect me. But you are not too sure what is going to happen to your kids and your grandkids. So it is, yes, attitudinal, lack of enforcement of the laws, and then maybe a cocktail of other issues.
But at the end of the day, for those in rural communities, it's difficult to come by even the resource, even though the resource is closer. And so they have to consume it in a very infantile or perhaps untreated state, which is also inimical to their health.
Yes, let me tell you, let me give you an experience.
Please do.
I went to campaign during the elections in a community which is in the capital of Bongo, called Zuri.
Zuri.
Yes. So when I got there, and these were women, and I knew them because of the primaries, had met them before the general election. I went and we were laughing, we were chatting and everything. So when I sat down, one of the ladies picked a calabash and walked to a nearby stream, dug the ground, fetched the water, and brought it to me and told me to drink. Actually, I was not thirsty. So genuinely, it was just that I was not thirsty. Then she insisted, drink it. So I took the water and drank. When I drank the water, he told me, this is what we drink here. And as an MP, I want somebody who wants to be an MP, and I know you are going to win. I want you to drink it. And on the basis of that, you put water as a top priority for us. Really, if you go to rural areas, you have situations where these things are happening. And let me use, again, areas that I'm comfortable with, because that's the area I've grown in. If we take Bongo, for example, because of the high level of fluoride content, even when you sink a borehole, which in itself is a cost, because if you were to sink a borehole without just putting the metals and other things, and just the normal drilling, it costs you in the neighborhood of about 7,000 Ghana cedis. You will sink this borehole. The Water Resources Commission, normally as part of the conditions, that you need to take the water and go and test it. They test and they realize that the fluoride level is so high that it's simply not right to allow people to drink. So these boreholes are capped so that people do not use them. So what is then the alternative for the person who lives in that neighborhood? Is to go to the nearest, stream or dam to compete with animals for the water. And so you have waterborne diseases being prevalent when you go to the hospital. Look, this is a very serious issue. I remember that even during the campaign, a friend of mine told me that, Eddie, if you can solve the problem of water in Bongo, you don't do anything, generations will forever remember you. Because of how serious it is. You and I will not appreciate this because in our homes, when we wake up and go into the kitchen, go into the bath, we turn the tap and water flows. So you don't see the magnitude of the problem until you move into such communities. Until you move into such communities, that is when you get to know that. So yes, at the rural level too, access to potable water is a key thing. And even though as a country we have expanded the water infrastructure, there are a lot of rural communities that still need water.
All right. Let's look at these issues quickly, then we'll go to some substantive issues on the budget, and also we'll look at energy as we dovetail into the subject of the budget. We're told that operations of the tourism facility need to be reviewed. Well, particularly this is coming in the wake of the disaster that has been recorded at the Kintampo waterfalls. And we know that there'd been concerns so far raised about those who were manning the facility, etc. What ideally should we be doing? And when we know that we have facilities and we should be managing them better?
Yeah. First and foremost, let me extend my condolences to the families, the bereaved families. Indeed, one of the victims, the National Service guy who died, happens to be the cousin of one of the MPs from our region. That's the MP for Pagachana.
Wow.
The guy is by name John Atanga. And he was just called by friends to join to go to the plane when they met his untimely death. So I extend my condolences to my colleague MP and then to all the bereaved families. And to those who are injured, I wish them a speedy recovery. But you see, I do know that accidents happen, but accidents in themselves are caused. You may indicate that if you look at the narrative that is emerging from this current disaster, clearly tells you that, yes, there was a natural component to it because there was a storm. Nobody can stop that. I'm told that even in the course of the storm and other things, what happened was that they saw some articles falling from the top. And some of the teachers had to advise the kids to move to a place that they thought was even safer. And in the course of when they moved there, it was just within that period that the tree also came and then landed on them, and then we had these casualties. So I say yes, you can control the storm. But for all tourist sites, even if you look at the act that establishes, gives people the opportunity to operate that, you need to, one of the paramount things is about health and safety. Health and safety requirement is key. And the only way you can enforce that is when you have trained personnel taking over those places and making sure that these things are done. It is also when you have a situation where the regulatory body has constant auditing of the area in terms of the personnel, in terms of even the health and what they call the hygiene of the area and other. Because you have, look, tourism is supposed to be the third largest in terms of income to the country. So it is an industry we shouldn't take lightly. The Kintampo one, it is under the management of the District Assembly, I am told. But because, and again, it comes back to the issue of the water I was talking to you about, the issue of indiscipline, issue of impunity and what have you. You have it because of change of government. Then you have people who get up and go, labeling themselves all sorts of names. They go there, take over the management of the place. And you remember that this is supposed to be for the state. Take over the management of the place. Revenues that are accrued from that are put in a personal account. And nobody says anything. And these people who are now managing the place may not have been trained, and so do not even have the skill. Because obviously somebody who is a trained person, seeing what was happening, would have known that as a health and safety executive or personnel, will know that on the basis of these symptoms or the signs, we need to do X or we need to do Y. These things were not done. Even sometimes, assuming that even these people, some of them who died, possibly even with first aid and other things, could have even saved some people. That was also not there. And we sit down, all we do is that after these people have died, then we can then get up, take a helicopter, fly to Kintampo, get up, sit down there and go there and have selfies and indicate that you are there to sympathize with the family and give them envelopes. That is not what the people need. And I think that, you know, there's this famous saying that says that they came for the communists. I said nothing. They came for the socialists. I said nothing. They came for the Jew. I said nothing. They came for the Catholic. I said nothing. And they came for me. It is a clear indication of the fact that when people were talking about the indiscriminate takeover of state institutions like the Harbour, like all other places, everybody thought that this was very far from us. I am not saying that the takeover is what caused this, but at least one thing that is emerging clearly is the fact that we didn't have authorized people manning the place. And therefore, this could, at least based on this, you could make some reasonable...
Based on the narratives.
You could make some reasonable guesses that, yes, things may have been different if we had this. So, for me, yes, there must be a review of all these things. We must also have a situation where the tourist board itself must constantly audit this. I am told that they are thinking of even some of the regulations and they want to review them. So I'm sure they may bring them to Parliament. I want to encourage my colleague who has been appointed as the Minister for Tourism, I'm talking about Honorable Afeku, should also to a very large extent, because I've listened to her public discussions, and she seems to have good ideas, and it appears she's a bit schooled in that area, and so I think she'll bring her expertise to bear. Indeed, she was talking about this whole issue of even insurance being incorporated in the package that is given to people who patronize this, who visit those areas. I think that these are things that we should be looking at. But as a country, we must be serious, particularly things that give us money. Look, this disaster, international media has reported it. Trust me, over a period of time, anybody who gets to Ghana may be a bit skeptical going to Kintampo Falls. It's going to deny the assembly of the needed resources, particularly at a time when even this assembly's common fund is being capped by 25%, going below the levels of the constitutionally mandated decent. So if you look at all these things, you have a situation where the government counterpart funding for DDF is also not being paid, and therefore they cannot release those funds. So Kintampo will be denied of those resources. And I mean, I think that we need to be a bit more serious, and government will have to put an end to this, excuse my language, this carelessness. Because see, it's the people in Kintampo who took over may not be the people who are doing this. If you have somebody as high as the Deputy General Secretary, even in the face of this disaster, justifying that he was manning a company with his guys and they took it over in 2009, and on the basis of that, it was justified that they should take over the Kintampo. This is a sign of insensitivity. You are being insensitive even to the people who are involved in this. What happened yesterday cannot be justified, and it shouldn't be the basis for where you should behave today. If I were to go and steal today, and then maybe I was not caught, then you get a rule and you just get up and say, on the basis of the fact that Eddie went and stole, I'm equally going to steal. It's simply wrong. And as a country, we should be making progress. I believe that the transition in 2008, 2009 was not the same as 2012, because there has been improvement, because it was an improvement over the 2001, and obviously there was an improvement. So I expect some level of improvement. But if you have a situation where people can just get up, take laws into their own, you know, there was the same Brahafu has issues. The same Brahafu youth organizer was the one who came to Accra and was already on your sister radio station and shouting and saying that yes, he was calling security personnel and other things to ransack people's houses to seize cars and other things. So if you have a situation where somebody can come and do this and go scot-free because he thinks, look, let me tell you, could the guy have done that under the NDC government? He couldn't have, because he knows that the law would have gone after him. In his mind, that's not his party, so he will not be protected. So it means that he has some level of protection, and that is what gives him that impudence to go around you. I'm told in Brown Hafo now, he's going about, if you are not on his list of approved DCEs, he goes after you. This is, look, sometimes some of these things you think you are doing others, it will come back to bite you. And I think it's something we should be looking at.
All right. Now, in the graphic, which seemed to have also gotten front page space, the TUC is describing the 2017 budget as ambitious, but urges government to raise tax-free threshold. And it says it has described the budget as consistent with the president's statement that he was in a hurry to return Ghana to a growth path that will bring prosperity to all Ghanaians, irrespective of their sex. There's a target of 6.5, we all know, and then there are clear items also. But the TUC is saying they call on government to consider reducing personal income taxes, and also suggests to it to raise a tax-free threshold to 12,000 Ghana cedis per annum, etc., etc. But they seem to have some trepidation, but some optimism. So more like a cautious optimism in a way.
Yeah, you see, basically, if you look at the projection for this year, in terms of growth, even if you look at the figures that have been mentioned by the finance minister, it's on the conservative side, because we do know that they should be able to grow around 7%. They are not growing around 7% because of any special thing they are doing. It's just because Sankofa is coming. You know, I'm coming from the energy sector. You have Sankofa coming, which is going to give us some hydrocarbon resource. That in itself is the basis for which we are going to have that growth. You will also have 10 not coming fully because it will ramp up this year. So that is also one area. You have the shortfalls that we had in the Jubilee, because that problem has been dealt with. So in terms of output, if you read the budget, one of the reasons why we had a shortfall in terms of the revenue targets, instead of the 37 something, we got 33 point something billion, was on the basis of the fact that in terms of our output, petroleum output, because actually petroleum sector had a negative growth because of
that 5 months
the problem that we had. So these are things that are there. Now, the government talks about the fact that, you see, if you look at the tax regime and all that they have done, I can understand that a greater part of it was to, as it were, meet some electoral promises. But in doing so, one thing they have done is that they have moved from job creation in terms of manufacturing and other things and production sector to more of import. And I'll explain to you why. You have a situation where the government, and that's why the TUC is having a challenge on that. There's a situation where the government has taken off the special import levy. You have, for example, the imports on spare parts have been taken off, even with regard to environment. You know, there's a reason why after 10 years, if a car is older than, maybe it's aged more than 10 years, it attracts penalty. The reason is because of the environmental aspect of it. There's another thing that you realize is that, look, today I can go to Germany, I can go to UK, buy a car, cannibalize it, just send it to strips and bring it as spare parts, bring it to Ghana, and then reassemble it. That is also one area that you should look at. But of course, it is a policy that they have taken. So you see that you now have a situation where, in the first place, already Ghanaians are unable, Ghanaian manufacturers and production units are unable to compete with places like China and India because of the fact that labor is cheap and the cost of production on itself is cheap. And so they bring these things there, and when they bring them, they are cheaper than the Ghanaian produced ones. As part of your own strategy, you said that you were going to, one, and make sure that you take off taxes on machinery and raw materials that were supposed to engender production and manufacturing. That has not been taken care of in the budget. So these people are still having problems. The cost of energy, which is one of the main components. In fact, if you were to look at the AGI report, that most of the cost of doing business, one of the things that was on top of their this had to do with cost of energy. The argument you had made was that the energy sector levy in itself was one of the main things that was affecting this particular thing, and therefore you were going to see how you were going to get that off. Unfortunately, you have not taken it off. So what it then means is that in terms of tariffs, seriously speaking, you have done nothing about it, because you go on to take that you have reduced street lighting, the public lighting levy from which does not exist in the first place. Because if you look at the act that brought about ESLA, that's the Energy Sector Levy Act, condensed all this into one single levy. So it doesn't even exist in the first place for you to take it off. So, but let's even assume that you decide to dismantle that and take that off. You are taking about that 2%. And then you talk about National Electrification Scheme, that's the rural education scheme. You are taking that also, you have reduced also by 2 percentage points. This has no cumulative effect on this, particularly if you have a situation where the cedi is not stabilized. It means that the cost of crude is going to be high. You have no control over, so the import prices, you don't have control over it. You have no control over the petroleum, sorry, how do you call them again? The spare parts and other things that the generating plants will have. So you have no control over these things.
In terms of their pricing.
Their pricing.
Because
so the only one you have control over is your tax component, which you have done nothing to it. So the cost of energy to industry is also high. So if you have cost of energy being high, you still have imports and other things very huge on them in terms of their machinery and other things. Where are you going to create the jobs that you are talking about? Because if it's about a pimpim store type of economy where let's go to China, buy the things, bring them and sell them, at what point will you create that? And if you look at the TUC's own admonition, they talk about the fact that, look, let's give us targets. Because if you say you want to create jobs, give us targets that maybe in the next, based on this strategy, you are expecting to create X number of jobs. Then I can then measure you on that. If you tell me that, oh, you will create jobs, and I do not even know, because in the budget there has not been any target, then how do we assess your performance in terms of that? Particularly when job creation and unemployment was one of the huge platforms that brought this government into power.
But at the end of the day, we know that, for example, when the president, recently when he was in Geneva, in that Africa CEO Summit or forum, said that government was not going to compete with the private sector in the financial market. At the end of the day, that should have a reflection on the credit worthiness of the businesses we have, and ultimately lead to strengthening their vision to expand their portfolios and their businesses, and thereby creating jobs alternatively.
You know that the government has planned that this year alone, for this fiscal year, they are going to borrow roughly in the neighborhood of about 14 billion.
You mean from the local market? Have they started,
both foreign,
started doing something in the local market already?
No, until the budget is approved, until we do the appropriation bill and other things, they can't do those things. So they have indicated that they want to raise that amount of money. Part of it is supposed to be domestic.
Yes. Sure.
The moment you begin to raise capital or raise funding, you are competing with the private sector.
So your point is what?
My point is that, in as much as you have said that, it is the practice that was suggested. Let's wait and see the component, even though they have indicated it. And let's see how much they will be able to borrow outside the country and how much they are borrowing. Because, of course, for me, it makes a lot of sense. If you can raise capital outside the country, one, it is cheaper, depending on your credit worthiness. Two, the fact that you then open up the space for private sector to take advantage of this. Because the businesses, the truth of the matter is that they are the financial institute, they are interested in giving credit to government because it's risk-free. You are guaranteed, as compared to us, you and me, if we take a loan now and we decide to move from house A and now go and stay in house B, that ends it. They cannot recover that.
Even you even have ESB.
Yes.
So at least you can tie.
I will ignore that comment of yours and continue myself. But basically, it tells you that so financial institutions themselves are always interested in lending money to the state, and so that will happen. So if the president says that he is not intending to compete with private sector for capital within the local market.
You made a comment about you don't see where government could create jobs because we're removing some level of taxes and creating some gaping holes because we're going to have a section of an industry that's going to flood the markets with a lot of imports. Somehow that is also going to compete with local businesses at some point. Yeah. And so it's a multifaceted approach that government is using to make sure that they satisfy electoral demands, satisfy the aspirations of the electoral public, but at the same time have an ambition to create or create the fiscal space that they need, that ultimately also would enable it to create revenue and do the expansionary activities like the one district, one factory. So where are the jobs going to come from? I mean, from your, let's say, objective points, not a political point.
Yeah, let me tell you. In the first place, let me state very clearly that the ambition to increase revenues by roughly almost over 40% from 2016 figures is overambitious. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen because, see, this whole idea of the fact that you know, because the whole principle is that, look, let's reduce the taxes. Let's take off what the quote-unquote nuisance taxes, and then ensure that we improve on our revenue collection. And on the basis of that, they think that they are going to have about 43% or thereabout over the 2016 figures. For me, it is very ambitious. They are not going to attain that, but that's okay. The other thing is that, yes, where are the jobs going to come from? That's the point I was just making. If you have a situation where, assuming that I produce toothpaste in Ghana, and then the cost of production here, because of the fact that taxes that are imposed on my raw materials and machinery are still in place, then I produce mine and I put it in the market. You go to China and you get it cheap and you bring it to Ghana. And you go into the market. Just simple economics. And I'm going to buy. I get to this brand of toothpaste and it tells me that it is X cedis. I get to this one is X+1. Where will I buy? I'll buy for this. Over a period of time, be sure that these people are going to go out of business. They are going to be squeezed out. So that's why we're talking about it. There's so much emphasis on that, on more of import rather than that. And that is one of the things that is affecting our city. You know why? The more you have imports, the more there's pressure, because importers will have to go for dollar to be able to import. So there's going to be pressure on the city. So even the only way, it is not rocket science. The only way you can help in stabilizing the city is to ensure that you have your production sector working. It reduces to a very large extent.
From the last budget,
yes,
in which, let's say, there was a seed money or some financial regime for, let's say, even pharmaceuticals, and now we're going to have those taxes on some level of imported pharmaceuticals reduced. That, of course, doesn't empower the local pharmaceutical company.
No, it doesn't.
How does that become at variance to what perhaps maybe we were experiencing the last 2 years or a year in terms of the financial year? You make a comparison to now.
Yeah, you see, you realize that there was strategy that was, and this was money coming from the EDIF. Then EDIF, no, EDIF doesn't exist again.
Yes, yes.
So you had EDIF where some pharmaceutical textiles and other some listed companies where there was deliberate government intervention to give them some stimulus package to be able to, as it were, expand their businesses. Now, if you look at the budget talks about the fact that essential medicines and other things that are not produced in Ghana, that those ones, taxes and levies are moved on. What prevents, if you wanted to do and still create jobs, what prevents government from, as it were, building the capacity of the already existing, what do you call it, pharmaceuticals, to venture into the manufacturing of those so-called essential medications? Talk to Dampong. Talk to Tobinco. Is it Tobinco? Tobinco. Dampong. Talk to them.
We have Itin.
Yeah, Itin drugs and other. Talk to them, and they will tell you that given the opportunity, the so-called essential drugs are things they can manufacture here. So if you have a situation where you have taken off that, again, because of the fact that these people have been able to acquire the patent in China and India, the medications are cheaper. They bring them here. So if Dampong manufactures maybe drug A, there's a competition for it. And the competition is that this one is cheaper. And because of the poverty level of our people, they will go for that. Over a period of time, you will be squeezing out these guys out of business.
So at the end of the day, you're saying that the intention or the promise on which the government was elected and wanted to structure its financials really are not going to be met. Is that what you're saying?
I can't say they are not all going to be met. But see, it's like if you want to bring relief, that's what TUC is talking about. Target income tax. You understand? Because at the end of the day, the moment you reduce the tax component of my salary, you give me more disposable income to be able to go for
a better purchasing
power to be able to go for or whatever I have. But that is still there. Then you go for these.
There's a reason why it's there.
Yeah, but
what's the reason?
The reason is because it is because it is the most reliable source of.
It's a constant.
So it's a constant because they will definitely target you in Joy FM or wherever.
Or in the formal sector.
They will target you for that. So that's what TUC is talking about. If you are going to target these people and let them bring that. You have, look, because you know why? You know corporate tax. You know they had indicated that corporate tax was going to be reduced from 25 to 20.
Yes, they have.
Corporate tax was also equally not touched. It was equally not touched. And they rather are going in for areas that will give you, I look at them as populace. Look,
they want to satisfy people's curiosities and sensitivities.
Let me use the KIA thing. In the first place, how do you abolish a tax that you have not imposed? KIA tax is not imposed because if you look, last we speak, they will bring a list of fees and charges that is approved by Parliament, that the finance minister can then tax Ghanaians. On that, there's no levy as KIA tax.
What is it?
What you have is that the local assemblies have their own, their elected people in the local assemblies impose these levies that they call, and here you call it KIA. In some areas, you see Lampu. You've heard the word Lampu.
Yes, Lampu.
That is it. That is it. So you are taking off that from the people. And for me, what is the rationale? In as much as my sisters from the north and my mothers from the north were excited and they were singing and all over the place, for me, policies must be made in such a way that you make people move from the worst state to the better state. As a northerner, and as somebody who has relatives and others who may come to Accra to make, I would expect that government would have been more interested in what the Ministry for Gender and Women, Gender,
Children and Social
Protection, what they started by giving these people skills to stay back in the north. But if you give them an incentive to come and be people who are, excuse my language, to come and carry and be like, I don't know, beast of burden, excuse my language for that.
Some
yes.
state of servitude.
You see, for me, it is not, yes,
at the
my
end
sisters
of the day,
will be excited, but that is not what is helping them.
The budget is more focused because of the load on government's burden on social infrastructure provision, or perhaps social services and welfare provision. And so the government is trying to create a certain balance between creating needed revenue, freeing us fiscal space for corporations, entities, and industry, and also at the end of the day, trying to assuage the feelings of the ordinary people who were crying for certain things that perhaps maybe the previous administration was not putting in place or was not giving them.
I think that, yes, basically their whole policy, in terms of in the budget, was informed by all these factors.
You should be happy then. Since you're of a social democratic stock.
No, I am not in any case against the whole idea of even reducing taxes.
What are you doing then?
Look, what I am saying is that the taxes must have effect on the people. Understand? Because if you get up and you say, look, let's give you a typical example, and I will use that, just give me just a few minutes to do. You know, they've taken off the 17.5% on airline tickets.
Domestic airline.
Domestic airline tickets. The whole logic is that it will trigger down to low airfares. Last year, we reduced aviation fuel by 25% in terms of pricing to be able to reduce domestic airline. It didn't go down, it didn't translate. What we rather got was that we had a lot of commercial airlines refilling in Ghana. So you had maybe a flight is due for Cote d'Ivoire or maybe Nigeria. They will go there, load, come here and refill because the fuel was cheaper. But in terms of domestic airlines, we didn't have a reduction. Again, who are the target people? The target people are people who in any way can even afford.
Who already can afford.
Can afford. My grandmother, who is coming from the north, if I don't have money to give, will have to join a bus. Now you have a situation where your 17.5% special petroleum levy, that is tax on petroleum products, you reduce it by 2%.
But it makes good for a good listening ear to be hearing that. I mean, that's all politics is.
No, but you see, you should be hearing that.
If I'm hearing good thing, there's reduction in
my mother who doesn't know the last time she joined the flight.
My
mother who doesn't know the last time she joined a flight. You say you have taken off 17.5% in terms of air flight. How many people are doing these things? It is just to enrich already the rich and to neglect the people. Look, go to today, just go to VIP and see the number of people who are queuing there to join bus, and look at the people that you want to intervene. Because taxes in themselves, and reduction of taxes should be an instrument. Yes.
You and I and those who can afford the airfare.
Who are
and then we are few if you compare us to the taxable income population.
Yes.
That's what
that is the point I'm making.
I've enjoyed my analysis with you, especially on water and particularly on the subject of the budget and your input so far. I think that we'll make some good recommendations to be bringing you often when you have the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Edward Bauer. Edward Bauer is a member of parliament for Bongo. And we've had great discussions on many subjects, especially on tourism also, in which he proposed some advocacy propositions in which we could have good policy regulations that would ensure that if they are enforceable, would ensure we have the right experts manning the various tourist facilities we have, because what we've seen from the weekend was one of the best stories we should have been hearing at the end of the day. Thank you, Edmund.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, so we're taking a break. But when we come back, we'll have a lot more for you. We'll stay on.